Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Not everyone who walks alone is lost. Some just got tired of walking with idiots. Now read that again. Because today we're peeling back the steel layers of a man who doesn't just step outside the system, he ignores it completely like a spam call during meditation. You see, research shows that less than 1% of men identify with Sigma traits. Not because the rest don't qualify, but because most people can't survive the mental solitude required. Being a Sigma male isn't trendy, it's psychologically expensive. It costs comfort, belonging, and the illusion of certainty. And that's what makes him terrifying to most, and fascinating to the rest. In a world obsessed with loud leaders and desperate followers, the Sigma male is the glitch in the algorithm, the man you never saw coming, but somehow can't stop watching. But make no mistake, he's not misunderstood. He's misclassified by people who secretly wish they had his discipline, his detachment, and his ability to disappear without a trace. So today we're revealing 20 brutal truths about Sigma males that most people can't handle. Truths that burn through fake personalities, social masks, and surface-level vibes. If you're brave enough, keep watching. Because this isn't just a personality type, it's a psychological rebellion. Number 1. He doesn't fear death, he fears dying while being unseen. He doesn't fear death, that's not what keeps him up at night. The real fear, the one he never says out loud, is dying while being completely unseen. Not physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Living a life where nobody truly got him. Where he poured oceans into people who only saw puddles. Where the full weight of who he is was never witnessed, never held, never mirrored back to him with the same depth. That's what haunts him. See, most people chase recognition, applause, legacy. The Sigma? He doesn't care about being famous. He doesn't want the spotlight. He doesn't need his name engraved in history. What he craves, what he secretly aches for, is impact. Quiet, raw, soul-deep impact. To look into someone's eyes, even just once, and know they saw him, the whole of him, not just the version he lets people see, but that kind of connection is rare. Almost mythic, because most people only engage with the surface. They want light, not shadows, comfort, not complexity. They want the version of him that smiles and nods, not the version that questions everything. So he ends up living in layers, constantly editing his presence, dimming his edges, translating his mind into simpler terms so people don't feel overwhelmed. And every time he does that, a part of him dies a little. That's why he disappears sometimes. Not to be dramatic, but because being unseen in plain sight feels lonelier than being alone. He'd rather vanish into silence than exist in a room full of people who still have no clue who he really is. And here's the twisted irony. The more he evolves, the less relatable he becomes. The deeper he thinks, the fewer people can meet him there. And so the world keeps offering him praise he doesn't care about and relationships that feel like spiritual leftovers. This is the truth no one tells you about men like him. It's not death that scares him. It's living an entire lifetime behind psychological glass, watching the world pass by, knowing he had galaxies inside him no one ever stopped long enough to explore. Number 2. He doesn't seek peace. He is peace that can go to war. He doesn't chase peace like it's something external to find. He is peace, but not the soft yoga in the sun kind people romanticize. His calm isn't born from avoidance or spiritual fluff. It's carved from fire, blood, and restraint. He's been to war inside himself, mentally, emotionally, and he won. That's why he's calm. That's why nothing rattles him easily. People mistake that stillness for weakness. They think because he doesn't bark orders, throw fists, or posture like an alpha, that he's harmless. But they're dead wrong. His silence isn't emptiness, it's capacity. And not the usual kind. The kind of capacity that can detonate without warning if pushed far enough. But here's the catch. He chooses not to. Every day. That's the real power. His peace isn't the absence of anger, it's the presence of control. Cold, calculated, brutal control. He's the man who could destroy you emotionally, mentally, sometimes even professionally, but won't. Not because he's scared of conflict, but because most battles bore him. He's learned that most fights are noise, and if he has to raise his voice or his fist to prove a point, he's already lost. But if the situation calls for it, if someone violates his code, crosses the wrong line, or threatens his inner world, he can shift in seconds. Not to chaos, but to controlled demolition. He doesn't explode. He eliminates. He doesn't scream. He vanishes with impact. He doesn't argue. He rewrites the room with presence alone. This is what most people can't wrap their heads around. He's the calm before the storm and the storm itself, depending on what you summon. He can hold space with you in total peace, or collapse your false sense of power with just one move. And you'll never see it coming because the weapon was never rage. It was silence, precision, and timing. That's why his peace is terrifying. It's not soft. It's not naive. It's not passive. It's a sleeping lion watching the field, fully aware he can rip it apart if he ever stands up. Number 3. He doesn't fear intimacy. He just fears being understood by the wrong mind. He doesn't run from intimacy. That's the lie people tell themselves when they can't figure him out. He's not emotionally unavailable. He's selectively available. Because for him, connection isn't just about affection or chemistry. It's about alignment of minds, values, and unspoken truths. He's not scared of being close to someone. He's scared of being misread, of handing over the keys to his soul only to realize the other person was just fumbling around with them. When someone gets close but lacks the capacity to truly understand him, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like being spiritually mistranslated. Like his thoughts are echoing in the wrong room. Like everything sacred about him is being filtered through a lens that reduces it to something shallow. That's not intimacy. That's emotional exposure with no return. And for a Sigma, that's worse than being alone. Because when he opens up, it's not halfway, it's not performance, it's full access, raw, unfiltered, and real. But if the other person can't meet him there, can't hold that weight, can't hear the silence between his words, can't feel what he's not saying, it turns sacred vulnerability into spiritual betrayal. That's why he takes so long to let people in. It's not arrogance, it's protection. He's not guarding himself because he thinks everyone is evil. He's guarding the meaning inside him, the mental terrain he's built through solitude, pain, reflection, and quiet evolution. Letting the wrong mind into that space feels like inviting a child into a temple just to watch them knock things over. So he watches, he waits, he tests, not with games, but with silence, observation, and depth. Because he's not looking for someone who can just love him, he's looking for someone who can read him without getting lost. Someone who can sit in the vastness of his mind and not flinch. Someone who doesn't just hear him, but knows what's behind the silence. It's not that he fears intimacy, he fears wasting it. Number 4. He doesn't need to be needed. That's why everyone wants him. He doesn't operate like most people who quietly or loudly crave to be needed. You won't find him fishing for compliments, clinging to relationships, or molding himself just to feel useful. His value isn't tied to being someone's emotional crutch. He doesn't need to be needed, and that alone creates a strange kind of gravitational pull around him. Because in a world full of people screaming, "Pick me," he's the one who never raises his hand. While others perform for attention, he stays grounded in his own lane, unmoved and uninterested in chasing relevance. That kind of emotional independence is rare, and people are drawn to it without fully understanding why. It creates a paradox. The less he chases people, the more they chase him. The more indifferent he is to being wanted, the more desirable he becomes. There's something about his silence, his self-possession, his complete lack of neediness that makes people feel like they've stumbled upon something rare. And rare things trigger obsession. People aren't used to someone who can walk away without looking back. They're used to guilt trips, over-explanations, dramatic exits. But him, he detaches without chaos, without anger, and without ego. That kind of clean, quiet removal hits different. It makes people question their worth in his world, and that's when they start craving his presence like it's air. He becomes the luxury no one can afford, but everyone wants. Not because he's trying to be exclusive, but because his standards are internal. He doesn't make himself expensive with attitude. He is expensive because his energy isn't for sale. The irony is cruel. While others try to earn love by being needed, the Sigma earns devotion by being unbothered. He doesn't perform emotional labor for approval. He doesn't care if people stay or go. That emotional self-sufficiency makes people desperate to be the exception. the one he does need. But here's the twist. He'll never need you. And that's exactly why you want him. Number 5. He doesn't ignore you, he's measuring the cost of giving you access. When he goes quiet, most people assume he's distant, uninterested, or socially awkward. But that silence? It's not a glitch. It's a test, a scan, a deep background check running silently in his mind. He's not ignoring you, he's calculating you. Not in a manipulative way, but in a protective one. Because access to him isn't casual, it's earned. See, for a Sigma male, relationships, any kind, romantic or platonic, aren't built on charm or chemistry alone. They're built on psychological safety. And before he lets anyone into his internal world, he measures what you bring with you, your patterns, your energy, your unconscious motives, your ability to read the room, and more importantly, to read yourself. He's asking silent questions. Do you bring peace or noise? Are you here to understand or to invade? Can you handle truth without flinching? Most people don't realize they're being screened. They think he's being aloof, mysterious, or playing hard to get. But really, he's giving you all the rope you need to climb or to hang yourself. He watches how you handle space, silence, boundaries, and every reaction tells him something. He's not just assessing compatibility, he's detecting future problems before they ever show up. Because once you're in, you're in. He doesn't do halfway connections. So before he lets you cross the threshold, he asks himself, is the risk of you worth the reality of you? And here's the brutal part. Most people fail that test and never know why. They just feel the slow fade, the quiet exit, the door that never fully opened. They think he ghosted. But the truth? He just decided your energy was too expensive for the peace he's built. And he doesn't owe you a receipt. So if he's quiet around you, don't mistake it for absence. That's the sound of him running numbers on your presence. Number 6. He doesn't care what you think, but he's already predicted what you'll say. He's not sitting there waiting for your opinion to shape his next move. In fact, by the time you've started talking, he's already run simulations in his mind of what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and what it's really rooted in. That's the thing most people don't get. He's not unbothered because he's arrogant. He's unbothered because your entire playbook is already downloaded and filed away under predictable. He doesn't react because there's nothing new to react to. He's already seen this behavior, this tone, this angle from people like you in situations like this, and once he's figured out the script, he mentally steps out of the conversation even if his body is still in the room. That's why you might think he's ignoring you. But what's really happening is deeper and maybe a little more uncomfortable. He's already decided your input isn't worth recalibrating his direction. It's not disrespect, it's discernment. People who need external approval will twist themselves into knots to prove they're listening, they're open, they're adaptable. But him? He listens for patterns, not praise, and once he identifies your mental loop, whether it's manipulative, shallow, or just emotionally noisy, he opts out. Quietly, without announcement, not to be rude, but to conserve energy. He doesn't argue because debates with unoriginal minds are just ego marathons. He doesn't clap back because he's not auditioning for applause. He simply moves on mentally, leaving most people confused and frustrated, wondering why their attempts to provoke or impress him fell flat. The truth is, he does hear you. He just doesn't need to validate you to stay grounded in himself. He doesn't need to challenge you to prove a point. And he doesn't need to be liked to feel secure. That's what makes him dangerous in quiet rooms. He's not waiting to speak. He's waiting to see if anything new is even worth saying. So when he doesn't respond the way you expected, don't take it personally. He already saw that coming, too. Number 7. He's not a loner. He's a gatekeeper of his own reality. He's not hiding from the world. He's filtering it. People love to throw the loner label on him because it's easier than admitting they don't qualify for access. But this isn't about introversion or social awkwardness. It's about mental hygiene. He's not avoiding people out of fear. He's avoiding the mental static most people carry without even realizing it. When he steps away, it's not a retreat, it's a recalibration. The average person talks too much, thinks too little, and fills space with noise. That noise clogs his mind, dulls his instincts, and drains his energy. So instead of forcing himself to blend in, he steps back. Not because he's antisocial, but because he's protecting the signal, his signal. His detachment isn't loneliness, it's clarity maintenance. Every interaction is an exchange of energy, and he's hyper-aware of what it costs him. People who talk in circles, chase attention, or live on autopilot pull him out of sync with himself. And that misalignment? It's something he refuses to tolerate. So he builds a kind of psychological firewall, not to keep the world out, but to keep his reality clean, sharp, focused. In solitude, his thoughts crystallize, his standards tighten, his instincts grow louder. That's where he gets his edge, from the silence others run from. But to the untrained eye, it looks like isolation, like weakness, like avoidance. What they don't see is that he's cultivating precision while they're diluting themselves. They don't realize he's not disconnected, he's just selective, brutally selective. And most people simply don't pass the mental quality check to get through. The irony? The same people who call him a loner are often the ones craving his attention. Because deep down they can sense it. He's not alone because he has no options. He's alone because most of what's out there isn't worth inviting in. He's not withdrawn. He's just busy guarding a world inside himself that can't be contaminated. And that's not loneliness. That's sovereignty. Number 8. He doesn't date for company. He dates for mental war. He doesn't date to pass time or fill a void. He doesn't need a cheerleader, a cuddle buddy, or someone to tag in Instagram photos. For him, love isn't about comfort. It's about collision. A collision of minds, values, silence, and inner codes. He doesn't want company. He wants a challenger, someone who can survive the intensity of his internal world without trying to dilute it. To most, that sounds exhausting. And honestly, it is, if you're not built for it. Because when a Sigma enters a relationship, he's not looking for ease. He's looking for elevation. He wants a woman who can sharpen his intellect, stretch his spirit, and hold her ground in silence without flinching. Emotional strength, intellectual precision, psychological clarity, those are his currency. If she lacks them, it doesn't matter how attractive she is. She becomes background noise. He doesn't do small talk. He watches how she argues, how she reacts when he withdraws, how she handles discomfort. He doesn't need her to agree with him. He needs her to withstand him. Not in a toxic way, but in a way that proves her depth has gravity, not just decoration. He needs to know her soul can go to war beside his, not just whisper affirmations from the sidelines. And when she can't? When she crumbles under pressure, plays emotional games, or confuses presence with possession. He doesn't yell or fight. He doesn't even explain. He just disappears emotionally. She's not blocked or ghosted. She's spiritually unseen, moved into the realm of the irrelevant, not out of cruelty, but out of precision. Because to him, love without depth is distraction. This is what makes him so difficult to date. He's not cold, he's calibrated. He doesn't want to be adored. He wants to be mirrored. And that requires a woman who's done the internal work to meet him at full psychological altitude. Anything less feels like babysitting. So no, he doesn't date for company. He dates for war. And not everyone survives the battlefield. Number 9. He doesn't want to be understood. He wants to be left untouched. People often assume he's just misunderstood, like some tortured genius waiting for the right person to come along and figure him out. They couldn't be more wrong. He's not sitting there craving to be unraveled. He's not dropping cryptic hints, hoping someone digs deeper. In fact, he's done the exact opposite. He's intentionally armored himself with psychological encryption so thick, most don't even know where the surface begins. That's not trauma speaking. It's clarity. At some point, he learned a brutal truth. Being understood by the wrong people is more damaging than being misunderstood by everyone. It invites invasion. It creates false familiarity. It gives others just enough knowledge to twist the narrative and weaponize his truth. So now, he doesn't want to be understood. He wants to be left untouched, undisturbed in the sanctum of his own mind. This is why he keeps people at arm's length, even those who seem sincere. It's not because he's bitter. It's because he's learned that people often want access not to honor his inner world, but to claim it, to dissect it, to control it. And so he hides in plain sight, open just enough to function, but sealed off where it matters most. You'll talk to him and think you're getting somewhere. You'll feel like you're peeling layers, but the truth is, he gave you that layer on purpose. It was a decoy, a firewall, and by the time you think you've reached the core, he's already moved it deeper. He doesn't need someone to complete him, heal him, or mirror him. He's already done that work alone. Now he protects that solitude like sacred ground, not because he's antisocial, but because very few minds can approach him without disturbing the balance he fought so hard to build. So no, he's not waiting to be figured out. He's watching to see who's wise enough not to try. Number 10. He's not mysterious. He's strategically incomplete. He doesn't walk around trying to be enigmatic. He's not crafting some brooding persona to attract attention. In fact, attention bores him. What people call mystery is just their frustration with not having enough pieces to categorize him. But here's the truth. He's not mysterious. He's strategically incomplete. He knows exactly what he's doing. Every detail he withholds is intentional. Every silence is a calculation. He's not hiding because he's ashamed or shy. He's filtering, withholding, testing. Because the more you know about someone, the easier it is to manipulate them, label them, or control their narrative. He's lived through that. He's seen how the wrong people turn vulnerability into leverage. And so, he learned to leave gaps. Gaps wide enough that no one can build a weapon out of his past, his thoughts, or his emotions. What you get from him isn't mystery, it's controlled disclosure. He gives you just enough to think you're close, while keeping the parts that matter behind mental security glass. And most people never realize it. They think they're peeling layers, getting deeper. But what they're really getting is a version of him crafted for their consumption, not his truth. That's what confuses people. They think he's emotionally blocked, that he's guarding trauma, that he needs to open up. But they don't realize he already opened up to himself. The work's been done. He's not lost, he's just not handing over the map. The strategic incompleteness isn't just for self-protection, it's also a test. He watches how you handle the unknown. Can you respect the silence without demanding an explanation? Can you stay curious without getting entitled? Can you sit with the fact that you'll never fully own him? Because if you can't handle the blanks, you were never meant to hold the truth. He's not mysterious, he's precise. And precision always leaves out what doesn't serve the mission, including people. Number 11. He forgives fast because he forgets you. Even faster. He doesn't hold grudges. Not because he's evolved past anger, but because holding on to you would be giving you too much power. When you betray him, he doesn't scream, doesn't explode, doesn't engage in some drawn-out drama for attention. He simply erases you, cleanly, quietly, permanently. People think forgiveness is about grace, softness, or reconciliation. But for him, forgiveness is about efficiency. Carrying emotional baggage slows him down. Revenge is a waste of time. Bitterness is emotional debt. So he clears the file. You're gone, not just from his life, but from his mental space entirely, and you'll feel it deeply. See, most people are used to being chased after a betrayal. They expect apologies, confrontation, or even retaliation. But when you cross a sigma, you get none of that. You get silence. Not the passive-aggressive kind, the kind that lets you know you've been quietly removed from the equation. It's unsettling because it offers no emotional feedback. No confirmation of damage done, just absence. That's how he protects his peace. He doesn't forgive because you earned it. He forgives because your presence isn't worth the cost of replaying your mistake. You're not special enough to keep as a cautionary tale. You're just data that didn't pass the test. And like corrupt software, you're deleted to keep the system clean. And the most brutal part, you'll never even know when it happened. One day you're in his world, and the next, you're not. No speech, no warning, just absence. You don't get closure because, in his mind, there was nothing left to close. You broke the code, so you don't get to stay in the system. To outsiders, it might look cold, but to him, it's clarity. It's discipline. It's self-respect. He doesn't forgive fast because he's soft. He forgives fast because he refuses to let your mistake live rent-free in his mind. Number 12. He doesn't build friendships, he tests for threats. He's not walking around trying to make friends. He's not joining every circle, laughing at every joke, or handing out trust like candy. On the surface, it may look like he's just quiet or reserved, but what's actually happening is far more surgical. Every interaction, every conversation, every subtle cue you give off is being logged, analyzed, and filed. You're not bonding, you're being assessed. He doesn't build friendships the way most people do. He doesn't look for shared hobbies or mutual vibes. He looks for threat indicators, inconsistencies, power plays, ego leaks, emotional instability. He's studying how you react when the spotlight's off, how you treat people who can't offer you anything, how often you talk just to fill silence. All of it matters, and he's running these silent audits without ever making it obvious. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. He's lived long enough to know that some of the most toxic people come in friendly packaging. So now, before he lets anyone get close, he filters them like a security system scanning for viruses. And make no mistake, he's not waiting for a major betrayal to make a decision. One manipulative smile, one guilt trip disguised as concern, one too eager compliment, and you're done. No confrontation, no warnings, just quietly moved into the never again folder, where people go to be permanently irrelevant. This is why his circle is microscopic. Not because he's antisocial, but because most people don't pass the audit. They don't even know it's happening. They think they're getting to know him. But what's really happening is a silent background check on their soul. And here's what makes it even more brutal. Once you're categorized, he doesn't change his mind. He doesn't give second chances lightly. If you triggered a red flag, even if it was subtle, you're no longer seen as a potential friend. You're seen as future damage avoided. He doesn't need a crowd. He needs clean energy. And if you fail to bring that, he won't hate you. He'll just forget you ever applied. So now you know, the Sigma male isn't just misunderstood. He's untranslated. Not because he's complicated, but because most people are too busy projecting their own noise to even hear his frequency. He doesn't fit into your systems. He doesn't play your emotional games. He doesn't seek your validation. He's not trying to be seen. He's protecting the parts of himself that most people wouldn't even know what to do with. You can call him mysterious, cold, detached, intimidating. That's fine. Labels don't stick to a man who isn't trying to be labeled in the first place. While the world performs for attention, he remains surgical in his presence, ruthless with his peace and selective with his loyalty. He's not here to be liked. He's here to live unbothered, unmatched, and untouched. And the brutal truth? That makes him unforgettable. So if this spoke to something raw and real in you, if it cracked open a part of your mind you didn't know needed words, then you already know what to do. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, and share this with someone who thinks they understand men like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because we're not here to blend in with the noise. We're here to expose the truth behind the silence. And for those who feel this in their bones, you're not alone. You're just finally hearing the language no one else speaks. Stay sharp, stay sovereign, and I'll see you in the next one.